parasitic accumulation that must indeed be defeated decisively. But handing over electricity generation and transmission, operations in rail corridors, ports, water system, and other strategic infrastructure to private profiteers, it's not a solution at all. It cannot be denied, comrades, that in the water sector, for instance, there is a connection between infrastructure destruction and privatization of water supply to water tanker bosses and the mafias. The left has to come with a program to respond to this thing, where our communities are subjected to the tyranny of mafias. And therefore, a tangible program must be developed out of this conference. We convened this conference, comrades, to seek to unite the forces of the left in constructing and crystallizing a shared campaign-based program that advances the objective of complete liberation, the emancipation of the working class, the transformation of our society, and the reversal of neoliberal domination of our economy. We are different organizations here. They asked me to speak on behalf of the steering committee after the mandate we were given to convene this conference, when we took the initiative. And I said to the CIC of the EFF, I struggled this morning whether to put on my party regalia and still be the chairperson of the steering committee. And you come here in full-clad regalia of the EFF. He said, indeed, on the program on the EFF, we are still different political organizations. That's why our comrades are also in full regalia. But on the basis of the respect of the task given, I felt that I should be accessible to anybody. Because we are different political organizations. We are not going here to dissolve our independent political organizations. We are creating a platform of common coordination of the working class agenda and programs. We are seeking here to deepen the unity of the working class, to revitalize working class activism, and indeed articulating a unifying medium-term agenda based on the objective demands of the working class in our country, the material condition of the people today in our country. That should be the basis that unites the left, not subjective factors, the interests of leaders. It is in this regard that we want to make a call as the steering committee. In fact, yesterday morning's session of the steering committee, the last, well, there was another one this morning, but yesterday's steering committee further said, we must still attempt to bring others who are not here. And I must indicate, and this was also agreed from our discussion, yesterday afternoon we went on another bilateral session as the SACP on behalf of the steering committee as well to engage with SAFTU. They had indicated that they will not be able to participate for the reason that they've raised. Some of them have been made public. We don't agree necessarily with most of them. But we had a robust comradely discussions with the comrade yesterday, and they've agreed to engage with us post this conference. And they said we can report that indeed we met because we had a mandate to meet with them from the steering committee. But we want to say to all other organizations of the left, we don't have to deepen our mistrust with one another. Who would have believed that the SACP will meet with the PAC? Comrade DSG. We met more than once with the PAC because this time we're not driven by egos. We must humble ourselves as forces of the left to recognize that none of us has the monopoly of answers to the struggles of the working class. And therefore, we treated each other in this regard with respect, with humility, with understanding, even on how other organizations do their own things. And this surprised Comrade Melvis, the president of AZAPO. And he says, this is tough work. This is tough work, Comrade Tony. One of the comrades says to me, so you comrade in the steering committee, how are you managing all these big organizations with top personalities for a conference of this magnitude? I said, respect. That's one thing, respect. Respect the other organization. And we have the principle of equality in that respect. So in that way, we are able to work with one another with due consideration, respect, and therefore identify areas that we can collaborate and work together on. That's the strategic task of the success of this conference of the left. I do believe that this conference will be extremely successful. In closing, comrades, I'm not taking the entire minutes that I was allocated. As a respect to the comrades, the commitment I also gave in the meeting. Others said they can't come to this conference if they are allocated 5 minutes. Because they were reading us from gossip. They were reading us from initial intentions to create a program. Now, all the leaders here, the speakers of various parties, have enough time, at least to present the views of their parties. 30 minutes each, maximum. I timed myself as I spoke. I'm still left with 5 minutes, Comrade Carl. I'm closing now. And I'll close before that 5 minutes ends. But everyone has got maximum 30 minutes. We think you can say everything that you want to say in 30 minutes. But we have also said in the steering committee, all parties can develop their full-length speeches and information that they want to share with us, what they stand for on this and that particular issue. Those documents will then be printed later on. Unfortunately, because of the size of coordination, sometimes even some weaknesses in the steering committee, we missed to meet the deadline of the 20th of May for submission of documents. That deadline was extended to the 24th of May. Many others did not still meet that deadline, but we have some that have already made the presentations. We'll combine all of those, and those that are going to speak still, we'll want you to share those speeches with us so that we can reproduce them as your records in this conference of the left. So therefore, the steering committee has called for respect, discipline, unity, especially political unity and clarity of different organizations, and our unwavering commitment to the struggles of the workers and the poor communities in our country. And we have said that if we are to build organs of people's power and strengthen ourselves as the left forces, certainly working in the mass movement becomes important. And the steering committee therefore expresses its full support for the draft declaration of the conference of the left, as well as the continued effort to build the broadest, widest unity of progressive forces in our struggle against exploitation, inequality, patriarchy, poverty, imperialism, and all forms of vices of capital. And this conference of the left, therefore, marks a decisive turn from fragmentation to coordination, from discussion to action, from aspiration to organization. The choice before us is very clear, comrades. There is no neutral ground, no time for grandstanding and unnecessary competition that only weakens the left forces. Let's embrace one another. Let's proceed with discipline, seriousness, and revolutionary purpose. And let's get to work for the people, for the working class. You are therefore, comrades, warmly welcome by the steering committee of the Conference of the Left, and we welcome equally our international delegations and the local representatives of various international delegations, the embassies here. I've seen Comrade Bassam from the Palestinian embassy. Our special solidarity to the people of Palestine, the heroic people of Palestine. Palestine has taught us how to resist. It continues to resist. We appreciate Palestine, and we send our greetings and solidarity to the people of Palestine. We must also send our greetings to the people of Iran that have showed us the dignity of resistance of the people of the South. It has shown imperialism its limits, and we stand with Iran at this hour of need. I've seen Comrade, the ambassador of Cuba. We appreciate Cuba. The grandmasters of capital today have identified it as a major threat across the world. They say it's the base of anti-Western forces. It's the base of revolution. It's the base of working class struggles. It's the base of socialism. Long live Cuba, long live. Comrades, you are all welcome. The Conference of the Left is officially opened. Down with capitalism, down. Forward to socialism, forward. I saved yourself 48 seconds. I thought I would save you a minute. My apologies for that. I will now let me say this, Comrade Chair. Thank you very much for singing. Let me say this, that because we are preparing to go to lunch, allow me, when we are still in this format, to invite the leader of the EFF, the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, Comrade Julius Malema, to address us before we go to lunch. I said much about his efforts under very difficult conditions to prepare for this conference. Comrade Malema, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Comrade Soling, Program Director, comrades, workers, trade unionists, progressive formations, revolutionary intellectuals, students, activists, community leaders, and fighters for justice across South Africa and the world. This conference convenes at a decisive historical moment characterized by economic instability, political uncertainty, and the technological advancement alongside expanding human misery and enormous productive capacity alongside deepening unemployment, hunger, and social collapse. Humanity has never had better scientific knowledge, greater productive potential, or greater technological sophistication than it does today. Yet billions of people continue to exist in conditions of insecurity, deprivation, violence, and despair because society remains controlled by the private accumulation of profit rather than the fulfillment of basic human needs. The global system of capitalism no longer even attempts to justify itself morally or philosophically because it has abandoned the language of justice and embraced openly the language of markets, competition, and permanent inequality. It conditions the entire population to accept mere survival as a normal and to internalize hopelessness as a permanent feature. The consequence of this is that the modern world has become incapable of producing social solidarity, human meaning, or democratic stability because societies organized around commodification reduces human beings into mere cogs in their drive towards profit extraction. This crisis expresses itself everywhere, through the destruction of the social fabric, ecological destruction, racism, misogyny and militarization, xenophobia, political extremism, and the growth of authoritarian tendencies across the globe. Millions of workers labor continuously while remaining trapped in debt. Young people obtain education only to encounter unemployment. Women enter workplaces while still carrying the burden of patriarchal violence and unpaid labor. Communities become sites of addiction, criminality, and despair because capitalism simultaneously destroys economic security and weakens collective social consciousness. It is therefore necessary for this conference to understand clearly that the crisis confronting humanity is capitalism functioning exactly as it was designed to function. The system produces abundance for a minority precisely through the organized deprivation of the majority. It accumulates wealth through dispossession, creates prosperity through exploitation, and ultimately secure comfort for a few through the permanent insecurity of billions. Frantz Fanon correctly described that the crisis we find ourselves in will require that the African leadership should do things differently. Fanon correctly understood that colonialism and capitalism were not merely systems of economic exploitation, but systems designed to deform human consciousness itself, because domination becomes easiest when oppressed people begin directing their anger against one another instead of against system of power. What we witness globally today is the political and psychological fragmentation produced by neoliberal capitalism, where workers are encouraged to compete against workers, Africans against Africans, migrants against citizens, men against women, and poor communities against one another, while financial elites and multinational corporations continue to consolidating wealth and power on a grand scale. Nowhere is this contradiction more visible than on the African continent, whose immense natural wealth continue to coexist with widespread poverty because Africa remains inserted into the global economy, primarily as a supplier of cheap labor, raw material, and extraction opportunity for international market. The continued underdevelopment of Africa, as stated by Walter Rodney, has never been the result of some deficiency amongst Africans. It is the direct historical outcome of slavery, colonialism, imperialist intervention, unequal exchange, and contemporary forms of neocolonial domination that maintain dependency while presenting themselves as development. Kwame Nkrumah warned decades ago that neocolonialism represented the highest stage of imperialism precisely because it preserved formal independence while maintaining economic subjugation. That warning remains profound. That warning remains profoundly relevant because many post-colonial states continue operating within economic frameworks fundamentally designed to preserve external dependency and domestic class inequality. The African political elite often inherited the state, but not the economy. And in many cases, sections of the elite eventually integrate themselves into the global system of capitalist accumulation rather than transforming them. South Africa represents perhaps the clearest expression of this contradiction because the democratic breakthrough of 1994 achieved enormous political significance while leaving the underlying structure of economic ownership fundamentally intact. Political apartheid formally ended, yet economic apartheid survived through property relations, financial concentration, unequal land ownership, and the continued domination of strategic sectors by white private capital. The majority acquired political rights without corresponding economic power, and therefore the promises associated with liberation became increasingly difficult to sustain materially because democracy without economic transformation leads to a discouragement. The South African economy remains structured around exclusion, unemployment, concentrated ownership. Official unemployment exceeds 32%, while expanded unemployment exceeds 43%, meaning millions of people exist outside meaningful economic participation altogether. Youth unemployment remained a serious crisis at over 60%, condemning an entire generation to a social marginalization despite their aspiration, education, and capabilities. These conditions represent structural features of an economic order incapable of absorbing labor because profit maximization increasingly on reducing labor costs, automating production, and concentrating wealth into few hands. The social consequences of this reality are devastating and interconnected. Crime cannot be understood separately from unemployment and social despair. Gender-based violence cannot be understood separately from system of domination, inequality, and economic insecurity. Drug abuse, gangsterism, depression, and the destruction of the social fabric all come from communities subjected to permanent economic exclusion and institutional neglect. When millions of people are denied meaningful participation in society, the result is not merely poverty, but the breakdown of social cohesion itself. This is why the left must reject superficial analysis that isolate individuals' social problem from the broader structure of capitalism. A society structured around domination inevitably produces violence in multiple forms because system of exploitation normalize hierarchy, dispossession, and dehumanization across all social relations. The growing phenomenon of Afrophobia within South Africa must therefore be confronted with absolute political clarity because it represents one of the most dangerous expressions of false consciousness within the working class. Poor Africans from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Nigeria, Somalia, or elsewhere on the continent are not responsible for unemployment, inequality, or collapsing public services. Migrants did not privatize state capacity. Migrants did not concentrate ownership of land and industry. Migrants did not construct an economy incapable of absorbing labor. The attempt to redirect legitimate social anger away from capital and towards vulnerable African communities serves ultimately to protect the very structure responsible for mass suffering. And this is what global white supremacy relies on, as this is a system they put in place over 100 years ago. A left that cannot defend Pan-African solidarity has abandoned its historical mission because the fragmentation of African people along nationalist and xenophobic lines merely strengthens imperialism and weakens working class unity. The future of African liberation depends fundamentally upon continental solidarity, regional industrialization, and coordinated resistance against global system of extraction and dependency. This is why the question of left unity has become historically urgent, because capitalism today operates globally through coordinated systems of finance, technology, military power, and ideological production, while progressive forces remain separated, defensive, and organizationally weak. International capital coordinates across borders with extraordinary efficiency. Yet, organizations claiming commitment to socialism often remain paralyzed by sectarian ego, historical resentment, and ideological confusion. The inability of progressive forces to develop a coherent organizational unity while capitalism consolidates globally represent one of the defining contradictions of our historical period. Lenin understood that revolutionary politics require not merely outrage against injustice, but disciplined organization capable of transforming social consciousness into political power. He recognizes that ruling classes do not surrender power voluntarily, that isolated resistance cannot defeat organized system of domination. Yet contemporary left formation often substitute rhetorical radicalism for strategic capacity, active activism for mass organization, and endless theoretical discussion for concrete political mobilization. In many instances, sections of the left have become more comfortable analyzing oppression than constructing power capable of defeating it. This conference must therefore confront honestly the historical weaknesses of progressive politics. Too often, left formation have failed to build a durable working class institution rooted in communities, workplaces, and youth struggles. Too often, ideological differences have been transformed into permanent organizational hostility. Too often, political leadership has degenerated into protection of individual influence rather than the construction of a collective revolutionary capacity. Meanwhile, capitalism continues reorganizing itself in South Africa and the world with extreme flexibility and discipline. The struggle for left unity is therefore not simply an organizational question, but a civilization necessity, because the global crisis of capitalism increasingly generates conditions favorable not automatically to socialism, but to barbarism. Across Europe and North America, the far right has expanded, and reactionary movements increasingly mobilize nationalism, racism, and anti-migrant sentiment precisely because neoliberal capitalism has destroyed social stability, while progressive forces remain incapable of presenting convincing alternatives rooted in mass politics. The failure of the left to organize social anger creates political space for fascism, tendencies to weaponize that anger against vulnerable communities rather than system of power. The Conference of the Left must therefore become more than a symbolic gathering of progressive organizations. It must become the beginning of a serious historical process aimed at reconstructing ideological clarity, organizational discipline, and revolutionary strategy within South Africa and the continent. However, we must give credit where it is due. Comrades, one of the most important lessons of the 21st century is that countries which refuse to surrender completely to a neoliberal capitalism continue to demonstrate important forms of social resilience despite enormous imperialist pressure. Cuba, despite the decade of blockade, sanctions, and economic warfare imposed by the United States, continue to achieve social outcomes in healthcare, literacy, and medical internationalism that many wealthier capitalist countries fail to achieve. Venezuela, despite relentless destabilization, sanctions, and sabotage, continued resisting imperial domination and defending national sovereignty over resources. The significance of Cuba and Venezuela is not that they are perfect societies. No revolutionary process is perfect. Their importance lies in the fact that they refuse to surrender national sovereignty entirely to global capital and insisted that society must prioritize collective social needs above corporate profit. That is why imperialism attacks Cuba and Venezuela relentlessly while embracing authoritarian capitalist regimes elsewhere in the world. The issue has never been democracy. The issue is control over resources, sovereignty, and economic direction. For this reason, the economic freedom fighters insist that any meaningful left convergence must center fundamentally the question of economic power, because political democracy without transformation of ownership patterns will continue reproducing inequality indefinitely. That is why the 7 cardinal pillars of the EFF are very important, and those cardinal pillars are what guide this organization today and makes it to be what it is, because its intention is to transform the economy of South Africa. And those cardinal pillars are expropriation of land without compensation for equal redistribution in use, nationalization of mines, banks, and strategic sectors without compensation, build state capacity and abolish the tender systems, free quality education, healthcare, housing, and sanitation, massive protected industrial development to create sustainable jobs, Pan-African economic development, and a move from reconciliation to justice, open, accountable, and corruption-free governance, nationalization expropriation, industrialization, and state-led development are therefore not abstract ideological preferences, but material and achievable necessities. However, the state cannot fulfill developmental obligations while economic sovereignty remains surrendered to private capital. Nor can meaningful social transformation occur while public institutions remain weakened through outsourcing, privatization, and tender systems that turn government into opportunities for accumulation by politically connected elite. It is within this context that we agree with the observation advanced by the South African Communist Party that the ANC increasingly interprets all independent political organizations outside of itself as hostility or betrayal. This reflects political insecurity produced by the erosion of historical legitimacy and organizational dominance. For decades, the ANC occupied such a central position within South African political life that sections of its leadership began confusing organization itself with the entirety of liberation politics. The ANC thinks it is the only liberation movement, and they always think we must always kneel before them. However, no political formation possesses permanent ownership over history, revolutionary legitimacy, or the aspiration of the working class. The alliance between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance was a profound ideological revelation because it demonstrated the extent to which the sections of the ANC leadership have become reconciled to neoliberal governance and capitalist management. One cannot credibly claim commitment to radical transformation while governing alongside forces historically dedicated to defending white monopoly capital, privatization, and market fundamentalism. The struggle for the left is therefore fundamentally a struggle for the future direction of human civilization itself. It is a struggle over whether dignity will remain more important than profit and whether, as humanity, will continue accepting organized inequality as natural and inevitable. To fight for socialism in the 21st century is not to cling nostalgically to the past, but to insist that humanity deserves a future beyond exploitation, alienation, and permanent insecurity. The responsibility of revolutionaries in this historical moment is therefore immense because hopelessness has become one of the capitalists' most powerful ideological weapons. The greatest task facing the left is therefore also psychological and moral, to restore imagination amongst the oppressed and to demonstrate once again that societies can be organized differently. History has never moved automatically towards justice. Progress has always depended upon organized struggle, political courage, and collective sacrifice. Every advance achieved by workers, women, colonized people, and oppressed communities, that is what we all should be striving for. This conference is not a talk shop, it's the beginning of shifting the balance of forces here in South Africa. This conference must therefore mark not another ritual gathering of progressive rhetoric, but the beginning of a new seriousness within the left, grounded in ideological clarity, strategic discipline, commitment to masses whose suffering continues daily under the violence of capitalism and imperialism. I thank you.
President of EFF. Thank you very much for your input. You also didn't take 30 minutes, much less even than me. Much appreciated. We are told that lunch will be ready at 2:30, so we'll now allocate the next 30 minutes to the Deputy President of the MK Party, Comrade Tony Yengeni. They used to call him the Walk when he was in the Communist Party.
Amandla. Amandla. Tata, Conference of the Left, Tata. Tata konke, Conference of the Left, Tata. Amandla. Away, two. Thanks, Comrade Chair, for the opportunity. I want Comrade Chair, Comrade Soli, to make the point that probably this conference must consider dedicating this gathering, this conference, to the memory of all those heroes, heroines, martyrs that paid the ultimate price and sacrifice for the liberation of this country, and probably consider very seriously to raise a monument in honor of those comrades. Because as we go along, we must be inspired by their example. The reason why we're here today is because there were people before us or with us who laid their lives down for the liberation of our people. It will be an important step and memory to their dedication if this conference can officially dedicate itself to the memory of those comrades. I want to take this opportunity to thank the SACP and its leadership for initiating this left conference and all other formations that joined that initiative. MK is proud to be associated with this left initiative. We commit that we will do everything to build and cement unity, unity in action, and solidarity amongst the black majority. This conference carries on its shoulders the restoration and continuation of the historical mission of our revolutionary struggle to unite the black majority to take over political power and govern this country and achieve all the noble dreams and aspirations of our people. When we went to Comrade Julius's home 2 months ago with President Zuma and the officials of Umkhondo Wesizwe to convey our condolences to the family and the president of the Economic Freedom Fighters, the president indeed conveyed our collective condolences to the Malema family. But he said something more. He said, whilst we are here to convey our condolences, but more importantly, I want to say the time has come for the black majority to come together, unite, and take over political power. The reason why we're here, comrades, is we're responding to that command by our president to go out and forge unity amongst all progressive forces in this country with the sole purpose of taking over political power. So the reason that we're here, comrades, is that it's not because we love each other, We are here for a reason. And the reason is assuming political power, so that we can use that political power to liberate our people. And therefore, the first order of business in this conference should and must be to ensure that this left conference emerges as a solid, powerful, and united left platform. This left conference, at the end, must come out with a revolutionary council that must run the affairs of this left conference. The left council must be subordinated and report to the left conference, meaning that this left conference becomes the supreme body of this left platform, which meets once or twice a year when it deems necessary. The Left Revolutionary Council must be guided by a set of principles, and those principles must include the national cry and demand of the black majority to bring back our land to its rightful owners and restore the dignity of our people and its traditional leadership. The second guiding principle of this left platform must be economic freedom in our lifetime, to ensure that our economy serves primarily the aspirations of the black majority. The black majority must own the economy. The black majority must own the banks, the mines, the farms, and the factories. The black majority must be put at the center of the economy and not at the periphery. This left platform must be guided by a democratic, non-racial, anti-colonial, and anti-imperialist political ethos. Let me repeat, comrades, that this left platform must, together, work towards assuming political state power and use that state power to destroy the legacy of apartheid and racism and form a powerful state that will intervene decisively in the service of the majority. All state organs, without exception, must be restructured to serve the people. Parliament should become, in reality, an organ of people's power and sovereignty. Representatives of Parliament should be elected democratically by the people to change policies and law in order to serve the interests of those that have nothing. The decisions of Parliament should be final, and no other organ of state should be above Parliament. Parliament must become that final arbiter and decision maker that represents the final sovereignty of our people. The security of our people and citizens is supreme, and the integrity of our borders must be guaranteed by the state. A war must be waged by the people and the state against crime and corruption to ensure the safety and security of our people. All must be equal before the law. The law must serve all people equally, No one, and no one, no matter how high in status, must be above the law. The law must always serve the people and not the other way around. We must live in peace with our neighbors and seek to cooperate and build strong economic relations and trade in the entire African continent. The unity of the African people in the continent is paramount. The unity of the African continent and continents and in other continents against war, aggression, and imperialism, for economic development, peace, and solidarity is of great urgency and importance. Out of these guidelines, comrades, must emerge a program of action that we're going to pursue and implement together. We're not armchair revolutionaries. We must act guided by clear, progressive, and revolutionary principles. The left front must represent the historic aspirations of the oppressed and exploited masses of South Africa. It must stand unapologetically on the side of the poorest of the poor, the working class, the rural masses, the unemployed, women, youth, progressive sections of our middle strata, and its primary mission must be total social, economic, political, and cultural emancipation of the black majority. To be progressive means not only commitment to local struggles, but unwavering solidarity with progressive African, continental, and international forces. Resisting imperialism, neo-colonialism, domination, and capitalist exploitation. The cry of Nkosi Sikelel' Africa must not merely remain a hymn, but a revolutionary call for total liberation, unity, and dignity of the African people across the continent and in the diaspora. The liberation of South Africa can never be divorced from the liberation and development of Africa as a whole. In our country, the Democratic Alliance and the Freedom Front Plus, together with their concubines, represent the most reactionary sections of our society. Forces rooted in the defense of colonial privilege, white monopoly capital, and neoliberal domination. Their political project seeks to weaken, fragment, and ultimately reverse the gains of our liberation struggle. Their agenda is deeply intertwined with the interests of international capital and imperialist networks, which continuously mobilize and protect to legitimize them. The South African economy remains fundamentally colonial and neo-colonial in character. The wealth of the country continues to be concentrated in the hands of a tiny minority, while the black majority remains dispossessed and marginalized. The left front, therefore, advances the strategic objective of restructuring the economy so that it serves the interests of the majority and not private monopolies or foreign capital. For genuine economic liberation to occur, the land and the mineral wealth must revert to the ownership and control of the people, led by the black majority. The historical injustice of land dispossession can never be resolved through cosmetic reforms or market-driven solutions. The dignity, authority, and historical role of traditional leadership must also be restored and protected. Traditional leaders remain custodians of the land, culture, customs, and spiritual heritage of African people. And they must occupy a respected place within the democratic and developmental architecture of our society. The left front affirms that real democracy cannot be reduced to elections every 5 years. People's power must be rebuilt through vibrant mass organizations, rooted within communities, workplaces, villages, youth formations, women's movements, and progressive civic structures. These formations are the true custodians of democracy and sovereignty. Many of these questions are reflected in the contemporary experience of the People's Republic of China. While South Africa's conditions are distinct and cannot be simply replicate the Chinese path, there are important lessons to be drawn regarding state capacity, long-term planning, infrastructure development, industrialization, poverty reduction, and strategic economic coordination. China's development demonstrates the importance of a strong developmental state capable of directing national resources towards collective advancement rather than narrow private accumulation. The Chinese experience further illustrates how Marxism-Leninism can be creatively adapted to concrete national realities rather than mechanically imposed. Unlike the Soviet Union, unlike the Soviet approach of total isolation from Western capital, China pursued a strategic engagement with global capital under strict national conditions designed to serve Chinese developmental objectives. Foreign capital was permitted entry only insofar as it advanced Chinese industrialization, technology transfer, and national development priorities. The central lesson is that the state, not private capital, must ultimately direct national development. Only a capable and sovereign state can undertake massive infrastructural transformation and defend national interests to coordinate long-term planning and ensure national wealth benefits the people rather than a tiny capitalist elite. The struggle for a left front is therefore fundamentally about completion of the liberation struggle, the achievement of true economic freedom, popular sovereignty, African dignity, and social justice for present and future generations. Thank you, comrade.
Thank you very much, Comrade Tony, the Deputy President of the MK Party. You were very honest to your word. You said you'll take a shorter time. You almost took half the time. And we debated this matter in the steering committee, whether organization can't say what they want to say in 15 minutes. But we can't go back there. We are happy that you are saving us time, as did Comrade Malema. Comrade Malema. Malema. Ke Malema. Ke fapane ntho e. Ke nyaka ba ishu ba re monna Kantwena a o lokwa Gauteng o bolela bjang na. Ke hlaloše botse. So they both saved us time. And I think it's important that when we come back from lunch, other parties take cognizance of this. Don't just stretch yourself because you've got 30 minutes. You can do it shorter. Thank you very much, Comrade Yengeni. Comrades, I'm told that lunch is ready at Serengeti. But Comrade Mazibuko was trying to help me. Where is Serengeti? Is this the first one here? That other side. Okay, when you come out of here, out of the main hall, you turn left. As you reach the first T-junction, you turn left. It's very important to make this turn. Then immediately after, you turn around so you can turn left again. Then that's where Serengeti is. So you keep left. Thank you. 1 hour. Let's be here at least 3:20 to start. Before we can enter, but 3:20, let's start. 1 hour lunch. Thank you very much. Amandla.